Spider-Man.
So episode 6 of The Acolyte is out, and I knew it was going to be extremely tough for this episode to top episode 5 because I honestly really loved episode 5, and I've got a lot to say about this one. We're going to quickly go through the main events that happen in this episode. I'm going to give my thoughts on everything that is going on, as well as where I think it could possibly lead, because there are tons of teases in this episode. Before we get started, if you guys could subscribe to the channel, we're on the road to 2,000 subs now. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Let's try to get this video to 50 likes. Whether you like this show, whether you don't like this show, leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your theories. I read every single one, and I most likely will respond. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started on this breakdown. So the main focus of this episode is kind of showing a yin and yang scenario with the twins with their new respective masters. We of course remember at the ending of episode 5, we saw Osha now is with the Sith master, while May is now with Master Soul. And since things are flip-flopped here, we kind of get each of the sisters kind of going into the other path that the other sister went down. Most interestingly, in my opinion, is of course Osha being with the mystery Sith master. Again, we do not know this person's actual name, we just know that he is a possible Sith who is trying to find an acolyte or a Padawan. And I have to say, the performance of this Sith master is definitely the best performance out of this entire series. He's menacing, but he's kind at the same time in this episode. I'm not sure if this is mainly just manipulation, but this character kind of explains things in a way where he kind of gets to Osha and gets her to understand where he's coming from, even though he's done these horrible things in the previous episode. We find out that he was once a Jedi in the past when he was younger, similar to Osha, and he kind of relates to her in that way and uses that as leverage to get under her skin. Now they're on this mystery planet, which is unknown at the time, but they kind of make it a big reveal that they're on an island, so who knows? Maybe this is Octo, probably not, but you know, just a theory I gotta throw out there. And the mystery Sith character is playing the long game with Osha here. He's not trying to fully convince her to go to the dark side, he's letting her feel out her own emotions and realize that the Jedi have been hiding so much from her, in fact lying to her. Because on the other hand, we have Master Soul, who feels tremendous guilt and regret, not only for the events that happened in last week's episode, but because of the lies that he's had to keep up with since the May and Osha situation all those years ago on Brandok, which I really wish we would have gotten answers to that here, but again, we have to wait till next week. And that really bums me out because there's only 2 episodes left, and I know next week is probably going to be that flashback episode where we learn everything, which of course in my personal opinion kind of hinders the moving forward of the plot, but I think there's possibly some really cool twists in there, so I'm not going to judge it until I see it. Master Soul eventually finds out that May is the one on board, not Osha, and he stuns her and locks her up. And I didn't find this portion of the episode too interesting because they're kind of just on a ship the whole time, and they're just teasing the whole fact that something different happened on Brandok all those years ago, but they never even, you know, talk about it. It's always, I'll tell you later, or something interrupts them, and that really annoys me because of course we're going to find it out, but we only have 2 episodes left, so like, let's get the ball rolling. We also have the Jedi being contacted here to come rescue Soul on Kofar. We have Master Vernestra going to this planet, finding out what happened to the Jedi, and she sees that all of these Jedi have died at the result of a lightsaber. Her Padawan suggests maybe Master Soul did this, maybe there's something going on here, and Vernestra actually thinks for a second, maybe he could have done this because he's been hiding the past of what's been going on or what happened on Brandok. We get to see the lightsaber whip used for the first time in live action, and it looked really cool considering that it is a lightsaber blade that transforms into a whip and then back into a blade before it retracts. I thought it was really well done here. Hopefully we see more of this in action in the last 2 episodes. But by far the most interesting aspect of not only this show but this episode in particular is the Sith master trying to convert Osha to the dark side. Because honestly, I feel like this is what the sequel trilogy should have done. We have someone on the good side being Rey transitioning over to the dark side, and then you have Finn, who was a stormtrooper, on the bad side turning into a good Jedi and having them duel at the end. Like, that was my dream scenario for the sequel trilogy, and it looks like they're kind of doing something similar here in The Acolyte, so I'm excited to see that develop. But it was really interesting seeing the Sith master manipulate but kind of just leave it up to Osha to make her own decisions in turning to the dark side. We also get a huge confirmation in this episode that Cortosis is in fact being used as the material for this Sith armor, and Osha at the very end of this episode actually puts on the helmet. But before we get to that, we have to talk about the theme that plays when this helmet is in display. If you listen closely, you can 100% hear Kylo Ren's theme from the sequel trilogy. The creator of this show actually spoke about this in an interview, saying, I can't really talk about it just yet, but it's there and it's there for a reason, I just can't talk about it yet. Meaning, is this Sith character possibly the first Knight of Ren, or maybe he is Ren himself? I don't know. It's a great theory, and I think that they're leading up to that, but I don't want to make any assumptions until we learn more. But it is a huge thing to point out that Kylo Kylo Ren's theme is playing in this show. Also, the helmets look extremely similar, so I wouldn't be surprised. We also learned that this Sith guy was basically blind while wearing this helmet, relying solely on the Force to battle, which in my opinion is super cool, because if you go 2 episodes prior to this, we see the Sith character for the first time move kind of like a puppet, moving off of senses alone. Very sharp and rapid movements. Now we know that he could not physically see with this helmet, at least not very well. Very good attention to detail there. You have to give them credit for that. Now, the moment that I thought was actually the end of the episode is where Master Soul is about to tell May about the past, and I was gonna get so furious if the episode ended here, because it cuts to black and it holds it for a while. And the editing really makes it seem like this was supposed to be the end of this episode, but they tacked on the last bit with Osha putting on the helmet at the very end, which I'm so glad they did, because, well, it gets me more excited for next week's episode. But at the same time, I feel like we're just hyping things up each week, not really delivering on much, which this episode did do a lot in terms of developing this Sith character. But again, the menacing aspect of him is pretty much gone. He's more relatable now than ever, and maybe it's a manipulation thing, maybe he's lying, but the clothing that he's wearing in this episode is white. He's being very friendly to Osha, giving her an option, making her feel like the Jedi are the evil ones. He could totally be lying, but at face value, this is what they're giving us, and that's what I'm receiving it as. So yeah, we get kind of another cliffhanger for next week's episode, and there's only 2 episodes left, with next week possibly and most probably being a flashback. So who knows, maybe the twist is going to be great. I really hope it is, because I feel like it will strengthen this series as a whole if the twist is great. But also, there's no action in this episode, so it was kind of slow. Overall, the great parts were most definitely with Osha and the Sith character, and the parts with May and Soul really could have been left behind, in my opinion. They could have just been a little bit more interesting, I think. Although I do want to point out before we end this video that Master Soul turns off the communications to the Jedi Council after he realizes it's May and not Osha, meaning he's trying to hide something as well. Soul is not a great, perfect Jedi, and that is very interesting. Guys, again, leave your comments down below. I read every single one. I most likely will respond. Subscribe to the channel, because we're on the road to 2,000 subs, and I will see you all very, very soon.